if Chernobyl is the third trumpet, then what of the others? This would mean that before the third trumpet would have been the first and second trumpet. And if you look at Chernobyl being in 1986, then we can ask, well, what major two events have happened in the world history prior to Chernobyl which would fulfill the first and second trumpets? And I point straight to World War I and World War II, even numbered appropriately. When we look at these trumpets, we find that the first trumpet has fire and hail mixed with blood hurled at the earth. Now consider World War I was based on trench warfare as well as artillery. Now when you're in a trench, unless you stick your head up, you're pretty safe. And so what they had to do was design a way of coming at them in the trenches, and that was by coming down from above, and that was done by firing up into the air. And so there was artillery and mortars. And the result is when an artillery shell or a mortar shell hits, it then blows up, and then everything that it blows up goes up into the air. Fire and hail mixed with blood, that's shrapnel and everything else, bits of trees, bits of grass, everything just being blown up into the air again and then coming back down. The tactic that they had in mind in World War I was that if they bombarded the enemy with enough artillery before they moved forward the troops, they would blow away all of the barbed wire, all of the obstacles, and so they could just move forward and take the next lot of trenches. When you look at the Battle of the Somme, for example, you end up with a moonscape where there is, all the grass is burnt up, all the forests are blown to bits, there's barely bits of trees left, and so you get this effect. Now we go to World War II, and the prophecy of the second trumpet talks about a big mountain of fire which is cast into the sea, and that a third of the ships were sunk, and a third of the souls that were in the water had life were killed. The seas turned to blood in those particular areas. And when we look at World War II, we see the U-boats of the Germans and the Japanese for that matter, and they were attacking the world's shipping and the merchant shippings. And if we look up in the encyclopedia, it says from memory, I think it was about 26 or 27% of merchant shipping was destroyed, sunk in World War II. Now it says a third of the ships are destroyed in the prophecy. Well, you add to this all of the warships, and I'm sure we're well up until the 33.3%, which is a third. The other factor here is the atomic bomb on Japan. Well, a big mountain of fire hurled into the sea, blew up Nagasaki, Hiroshima first and Nagasaki. The interesting thing is this is verse 8.8, and the date in the middle is the 8th of the 8th, 1945, 8th of August, 1945. And so we see these things there. The other thing was the Germans were actually letting people go after they sunk initially, and then they got more ruthless and started machine gunning everybody in the water. And so there was the other prophecy of the sea turning to blood, and the souls, a third of the souls in the water and had life that were killed. Yeah, there's that factor for World War I, World War II, and the Chernobyl. Now, we come up to after the third trumpet, Chernobyl, there was the Gulf War in 1991. And this war had Saddam Hussein invade Kuwait and annex it. And he was driven back under threat of an American invasion to drive him back. And America came in to help out the Saudis, with Kuwait being one of their cousins. Anyway, Saddam Hussein's men lit the oil wells on fire in Kuwait. And if you look up the various websites on this event, you'll actually find that America had contracts to put out these oil well fires, and it took them weeks, something like 6 weeks I think from memory, to actually come in and put those fires out. And so these oil wells burnt. Actually, I think that's when they started to put them out. They actually burnt for a lot longer, and all of this smoke got into the winds and went to Europe, Asia, all over the place, and effectively it blocked out the skies. People had to drive around with their headlights on during the day, and even then it was hard to see. They had breathing difficulties, eye problems, all of these things. And when we look at the fourth trumpet, this is very much what it says. The skies became sackcloth in front of the sun and blocked out the sun, the moon and the stars for a third of the day. Now how is this? This is actually showing a third of the day. It's showing that it knows that there is a revolution of the earth, and a third of the day being blocked out as to not be able to see the skies. And so we see this there, and then it says that there's an eagle in the heaven which says, woe, woe, woe to the earth, for the first woe is over and the next two are to come. Now this eagle, when we consider that the Americans have the eagle as their reference, that we have the Americans are actually flying in this fly zone around Iraq in the Gulf War, and also that they have the airways for their radio and their TV, where surely there was an evangelist somewhere reading out from the book of Revelation, woe, woe, woe to the earth. And so we have these four trumpets. And then that brings us to the fifth trumpet. Now in between time we've had the major event of 9/11 in 2001. And one would think, well, does 9/11 have a link to prophecy? Well, when we actually look at what's to come next, it's the fifth trumpet, and it's from Revelation chapter 9, and verse 11 actually is the leader of those flying armies. And he's called the Destroyer, which is Abaddon and Apollyon in Hebrew and Greek. And both of these mean the destroyer or destruction. And if you actually go back to the root words of these in the Strong's Concordance, it actually hints that this is Satan himself. And the final leader, called the Antichrist, also called the Beast, is the final leader of this final kingdom on earth before the new kingdom is set up. The Prince of Peace and Jesus Christ at the second coming. Well, this final leader is basically said to be Satan himself, or is at least possessed by him. And Jesus said, by their fruits you shall know them. Now Jesus preached on love and peace. Peace not as the world gives, which was by domination and brute force, but peace by having a good conscience and love and kindness, brotherly kindness towards one another, goodwill. Peace and goodwill is the message of God, is the message of Jesus Christ. And the destroyer comes forward, or the Antichrist comes forward in Jesus' name, but to destroy. He's actually not the Christ, and the opposite of the Christ, and says he is the Christ. So we go back to the old analogies of the wolf in sheep's clothing, and we see this here. Now after 9/11, there was the war on terror. And from that, the Iraq war started 555 days after September 11. 4,445 days after the start of the Gulf War, which was the fourth trumpet.